Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Nobody 2, the sequel to the 2021 action comedy that starred Bob Odenkirk, Connie Nielsen, RZA, and Christopher Lloyd, who had a surprising role in that film. They all returned for Nobody 2, joined by newcomers John Ortiz, Colin Hanks, and Sharon Stone. In this film, our assassin suburban dad, Hutch, after returning back to his violent past, takes his family on family vacation only to find trouble. This is the sequel, as I said before, to a film that caught me off guard in 2021. It was surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be. Now, it wasn't Oscar worthy by no stretch of the imagination, but we're in this renaissance, or not renaissance, but kind of a revolution in the action genre where we get these John Wick style films. And I know a lot of people like to direct these type of films to John Wick because it's the most popular, the most successful of this subgenre. But you really got to go back to Liam Neeson and Taken. You know, that's where this really started, in which you get these seemingly normal, ordinary human beings doing extraordinary things from their past. And I love that about it. But what I loved about the first Nobody, we saw Bob Odenkirk, who is the last person you would imagine in an action film of this caliber, because we're used to seeing him on a Ben Stiller show or Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, and he's more of a comedic actor in his career. And so for him to kind of dive into this assassin role was kind of curious. You know, that's what really piqued my interest back in 2021. But he handled it well. And what makes this character of Hutch so intriguing is he isn't John Wick. You know, he isn't this unstoppable force. He gets beat up as well. You know, he gets damaged as well. But he has the ability to inflict more damage on his opponent. And I absolutely loved Nobody. And so I was super excited for Nobody 2. This go around, the film is directed by Timo Tagino. I believe I'm saying his name right. I'm pretty sure I will nail it, because eventually we're going to know this name. This will become a household name as an action director. This young man directed The Night Comes for Us, which is a film that I discovered on Netflix a couple of years back. And it stars some of the guys from the Raid films. And that's what really drew my attention to it. And man, it was such a powerful film. I've watched that movie at least 5 or 6 times. I loved The Night Comes for Us. You know, the action is great. The story was great. You know, the emotional moments was great. It's a great movie. If it's still on Netflix, check it out. But he has directing duties of Nobody 2. And of course, man, he handles the action perfectly. It's hard to believe that the action will ramp up to an 11 in this film. You would hope that in a sequel, but it actually turns up the heat more than I thought it was going to. You know, while I was watching it, I'm like, man, this is shot well. This is choreographed so well. And I don't know why this shocked me, being as though all of the people involved behind the scenes. You know, this film comes to us from 87 North, which is the same production company that has given us the John Wick franchise and Atomic Blonde, films of that ilk, and just recently The Fall Guy and stuff like that. This is a action stunt heavy, practical stunt heavy production company that has just pierced my heart, man, because I'm a big practical effects stunt work type of guy. I'm old school in that matter. You know, digital effects and CGI has its place, but sometimes you want to see actual people get blown up. And this production company does it so well. They're the masters of this art. Uh, this film was awesome. This was an awesome movie. This is when you make a sequel. This is what a sequel should be. I hope Hollywood takes note from this. This is how you make a sequel. You don't try to outdo the first one. And let me explain myself. You of course you want to be bigger and better than your first film, you know, but you shouldn't shoot for that. You know, you shouldn't just do bigger and better for bigger and better sake. You know, put more explosions and more gunfights, more fist fights, just to say we did more than we did in the first film. You want to have a better story and, of course, better action, but find innovative ways to do the action. And this movie found the way to tell a simpler. This was a simpler story than the first film. The first film was a little more complex than this one, but it felt like the stakes were higher in this movie. There were actually moments in this film when I thought the character of Hutch wasn't going to make it out of this movie. You know, whereas in the first film, I figured he would make it out. This movie, you know, even though I'm not going to say he's going against lesser assailants here, because they were threats and they were legitimate threats. But if you compare the two, where in the first movie he was going up against a cartel, a Russian cartel, and in this film you're going up against, you know, small town bootleggers, and you compare the two, you're like, well, I would think the cartel would be more of a threat, but this little bootleg operation that they had going on was pretty extensive. You know, you got crooked sheriffs involved. You got a crazy, whacked out crime boss of a female involved, and all type of stuff. So it just felt like the stakes were bigger. Then you add the fact that his family is more involved in this film as per the first one, and so it was a taller task, but it was done in a subtle way, if that makes any sense. But it works. It works in this film. Bob Odenkirk is excellent in this role. I hope this turns into a bigger franchise, and I say that I hope we get more films. You know, I know he's 60 now, or pushing 60, but he can handle it. He is awesome. And if you don't know this, he does the majority of his own stunts. He does everything in this film. He did everything in the first film. That's why I enjoyed it more. You know, it felt real. And that goes back to my point about practical effects and stunt work and stuff. That's why I enjoy those movies so much. You know, you get these superhero films, it's hard to connect with them because you know that is a computer generated image on screen sometimes, you know, when Spider-Man is swinging and all this here. But here, this is a grounded fisticuff battle between this man and this cartel, or this crime syndicate or whatever. It just felt real. And Bob Odenkirk is excellent in his role. It felt like he kind of matured from the first movie. You know, he added a little something to this role. There was a little more comedic tone to his character than it was in the first film, and I appreciate it for that. Who does more than they did in the first film would be Connie Nielsen, who plays his wife Becca in this film. I'm a huge Connie Nielsen fan. I've enjoyed her performances throughout her career, but in that first one, even though she was good in Nobody, but in Nobody 2, she has more to do, and I think the film benefits more from that. Enjoyed her here. Christopher Lloyd is good here. RZA is good as well. Kind of out of nowhere with RZA, you know. Well, out of nowhere with RZA, but it's good to see him. He has a cool scene in it too, involving a katana sword. If you haven't seen the film, it's exciting. Our newcomers here, John Ortiz, love him as well. Good to see him in this film. Colin Hanks. This is the movie where people gonna look at this and be like, man, Tom Hanks spit that boy out. he looks, I mean, he always looked like his dad. He always looked like his dad. I'm not going to take that away, but something about me watching this film, him and Nobody Too, he looks like Tom Hanks. I mean, the mannerisms he was doing, and he plays the villain. He plays one of the villains, and that was a refreshing look from his character. To see him in his villainous role, and he does it well. Aside from the fact that I'm going on a rant about him and his dad, but he plays an excellent part here. But I just couldn't get away with the fact, like, man, he looks like Tom. I mean, everything about it just screamed Tom, and it's not a knock. I mean, you can't help it. It's genetics. You can't help it. But it was good to see him in this role that he was in. Kind of a sympathetic villain in a way. But it works. It works for what we got. Sharon Stone, people. I would say the majority of the world's forever crush. Going back to Basic Instinct and Total Recall and all that good stuff. Sharon Stone looked like she's having the time of her life performing in this movie. She is just crazy. Now, this isn't the first time she's played the villain. Well, technically, she was the villain in Basic Instinct, but not in my eyes. But whatever. She unfortunately was cast in that horrible Catwoman movie with Halle Berry as the villain, and I can't really fault her for that. Everybody looked bad in that movie. Everything about that movie was bad. But here, it was purposely bad, and I say bad loosely because to the layman, you look at that performance and like, man, she's just all over the place with her performance. But that character, it fits. It fits. Now, it doesn't fit the movie per se. Nah, not so much, because it's moments where her character should have been playing it a little more seriously, I think, so where we can take the gravity of the situation a little more seriously. But she was just so manic and crazy. It kind of takes me out of it. But at the same time, that character is just crazy, and that's how she's described throughout the film. Her character is described. She's crazy. She's unhinged. And, once you really digest that, you just accept it for what it is. But she does it. She goes all out. She is all in on playing this crazy role. And as much as I was being distracted by her craziness and all over the place, over the top performance that she's given, by the time the movie ended, I actually accepted it. I was like, oh, this actually worked for me. It took a while, but it got there. I did enjoy that aspect. You go to this movie for the action. Let's not be fooled here, people. You're not here for the story. You're not here for the romantic awakening between Hutch and Becca. No, you're here for the action. And like I said before, the action delivered. The action was better than the first film. The fights were more brutal. The gore was more gorier. And for all you action junkies, I think you would get your fix with this film. The only negatives, like I said, at moments, the Sharon Stone performance will probably take you out of the movie for a couple of minutes, but just bear with it. Just bear with it. It'll even itself out. But it's just getting through her performance, and she's not in it long. She's not in it from the beginning to the end. She's actually not in it that long. Once you sit back and think about it. some of the story beats are a little off. It's things start to be a little convenient for our characters to move on to the next scene. You know what I'm saying? You get your typical cliches that or the ex machinas that happen that will just come out of nowhere and oh voila, we know how to figure this out. But those type of things that's in the majority of films. But it's very prevalent here. Being as though this movie is only 90 minutes long. It's not a long movie. It's really uh I mean, once it gets started, it's going. It's really no moments of letting up. There's a lot of action sequences in between the little moments that we do get to flush out characters. But overall, it was great. I love the fact that it picked up right after the first film and that repercussions from that first film is still lingering into this film. And it doesn't really affect the main story, the A plot line. It's more to the B plot line now that's lingering, but it's there. And I like that they connected both of these films in that matter. And it makes sense, because you can't do what you did in that first film and not walk away unscathed. So I do love and appreciate the fact that they acknowledged that and made it to whereas the character of Hutch is reaping what he sows. And so that just added a sense of realism to the story. But overall, I really enjoyed Nobody 2. It is a perfect sequel to that film. It's not the greatest film ever, but it is the perfect sequel to its predecessor. And like I said, I hope Hollywood takes note of that. This is how you make sequels. You don't have to increase the budget by $100 million to try to capitalize on the popularity of a film. Just tell a basic story and do it well and do it a little bit better, in certain aspects. Add more development to the Connie Nielsen character, or give Bob Odenkirk something more to do, comedic, that'll lean more to his skills as a comedic actor and stuff like that. It just little sprinkles of things that they did. Nothing major, just little sprinkles of things that they did to make this film better than the first. Nobody 2 gets a letter grade of a B minus. Yeah, awesome movie, man. Really good movie. It's one of those movies. Yeah, you're not gonna walk away having a better outlook on life, reevaluating your life decisions or anything like that, or getting you closer to God. But this will scratch that action itch that you may have. I would like to know, what did you think of Nobody 2? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also on YouTube, subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the Concession Stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Nobody 2. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.